All right, all right, all right. Welcome everyone to the Conscious Resistance Network. My name is Derrick Broze, as usual, and welcome to 2020. We're starting off fresh with something brand new, which I'm calling Questions for Derrick. Those of you who followed the independent alternative media, you're probably familiar with my friend James Corbett. Whoa. Got some technical difficulties. You're familiar with James Corbett of the Corbett Report, and he does questions for Corbett. I decided to do questions for Derrick. I don't really use my last name like that, questions for bros, but whatever you want to call it. The point is, I'm going to start trying to address questions that come from you guys. I get emails often. There's YouTube comments, there's social media comments from BitChute to Minds to, as I said, in emails and all sorts of ways that you guys can ask me questions. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always just reach out at Derrick@theconsciousresistance.com if you want to get in touch. And we're going to try to do this on a weekly basis. This is number 1, and we're doing a video based on what is counter-economics. And this question came from me. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It came to me from somebody commenting on a recent video. Actually, don't even worry about it. I'll find it later. The point is, somebody came to me and said, Derrick, what is counter-economics? And they asked that question. I can't remember what the user's name is, but if you're listening to this, well, you're going to get your answer right now. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you guys, bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. This is the way that you can keep up with my work. As we go into 2020, I am going to be using social media less and less, including eventually probably abandoning this YouTube channel if censorship continues to get worse. But you can subscribe to all of our content at theconsciousresistance.com. You can follow all of our alternative platforms. And of course, if you want to support my efforts, do so at Patreon or Subscribestar. But I want to recommend this, guys. If you've never actually checked out our About page, go here to Welcome to TCRN 2.0, which is the Conscious Resistance Network 2.0, which we launched in June 8, 2014. We're hoping to launch 3.0, a new website redesign, this coming year. But anyways, if you come down here, this is actually a helpful page, an About page. And as it says here, if you're new to our website and you want to understand the philosophy that we promote, check out these posts to get to know our goals. What is the conscious resistance? Strong hearts and revolutionary minds. What is agorism? Vertical and horizontal agorism, and it goes on and on. But these are a good starting place if you actually want to know what this channel's about. I talk about news, I talk about the pedocracy, I talk about the finders, I talk about Epstein, I talk about 5G. But my real goal is more of a philosophical, kind of spiritual goal to wake people up and to evolutionize the world. So if you're new to these ideas and you want to get deeper instead of just have a surface level understanding of what's going on in the world, I recommend checking this out. And so the question was, what is counter-economics? Because I often have talked about counter-economics as the solution to many of our problems. In fact, I'm writing a book right now called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State with Counter-Economics as the Solution. So I'm going to show you guys a few videos. I will put these in the links below if you want to catch up with my past work, but I also will explain to you currently what is going on and what counter-economics means. But back in March 2015, you can see this. I had crazy hair and dreadlocks. I did a video called Who is Samuel Konkin and What is Agorism? And I recommend checking that out because Samuel Edward Konkin III, was the man who created, discovered, founded, however you want to put it, the philosophy of agorism. And agorism comes from the Greek word agora for marketplace. And Konkin had his own very particular libertarian philosophy and ideals, but at the heart of it, at heart of agorism was what he called a counter-economics. And counter-economics itself can be pulled out of agorism. You don't necessarily have to believe in everything Konkin said. You don't have to be an anarchist to understand and appreciate counter-economics. So I've been doing my best to promote this idea that we're about to go over. So I did this video back in March 2015. You can also find this chapter from my third book, which came out in April 2018. And here's the audio version of Chapter 2, Manifesto of the Free Humans, What is Agorism? Again, you can read that or watch or listen to that and get a deeper understanding. Also, my Chapter 3, Vertical and Horizontal Agorism. It goes even further to explain these ideas. And I put this video out way in the beginning of this year called The Counter Economy Alternative, which is a rare essay that I found from Samuel Konkin regarding the counter-economic path away from statism, which is slavery, and towards freedom. So if you're interested in those ideas, I will put all these past videos in the links. Of course, you can just search on our channel, guys. You can always search agorism or counter-economics and things of that sort. And this leads me to what we're going to talk about today. Konkin died in 2004 before the internet really became what it is today, before social media, before cryptocurrency, and honestly before a lot of the ideas that he predicted were going to come. This was his final book that he never finished. He wrote this apparently in the 80s and the 90s and tried to get publishers, but of course it's a little radical book, and so nobody wanted to publish it. He eventually gave up on it, and then he died. And recently, late 2018, his friend Victor Koman, who is the man who's been publishing Konkin's books in the past decades, he found Konkin's finished chapters for Counter-Economics, which was going to be his third and big kind of magnum opus book, which would break down counter-economics as both a strategy, a science, and a tool for dismantling the state or opting out of the state. And Konkin never finished it. Victor found the unfinished chapters and some of Konkin's notes. He compiled it, he updated it, edited it, and made it look nice and neat. And he put that into this book, Counter-Economics from the Back Alleys to the Stars. Unfortunately, this book is only available at through digital copy via Smashwords, so you can find PDF copies of it online now, but it hasn't been put into print. So when I first heard about this, I decided, guys, I'm going to finish Konkin's book, and I started writing what I was calling Counter-Economics: How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. We're now simply calling this How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, and that is where I am now. I'm finishing this book. I have probably 2 chapters left to write, guys, and then it goes to the editor, and if you want it, it'll be in your digital copy or in physical copy by the end of this month, January 2020, and this can give you some strategic ideas and tactics on how to opt out of the technocracy, the technocratic state, the digital dystopia that we are headed towards. So I said all that to say that if you are totally unfamiliar with what I'm about to cover, there's you must be new to the channel, or you haven't really been paying attention, but you can go back and find my past work to learn more all about that. In the meantime, I'm going to give you guys some definitions of counter-economics. I'm going to preview to you guys some of my brand new book that nobody else has read before. I posted the table of contents to the YouTube channel and to elsewhere, so some of you may have seen this, but we're going to go here to a chapter that I'm calling Counter-Economics for the Digital Age, chapter 5 of this book, and I'm going to give you some definitions of counter-economics, because as I said, you don't have to be an anarchist, you don't have to be an agorist, you don't have to be any of those things, a libertarian even, to understand the value of counter-economics. So let's just get that out of the way. Also, one thing I want to note, because when people discuss economics, I definitely understand that people's eyes glaze over, and unfortunately, because of so much ignorance about economics, there are plenty of people who just don't understand the world. They don't understand the power of central banks. They don't understand economic monopolies and enslavement. So to understand this, you need to understand one thing first. Economics, making an economic decision, does not necessitate in the involvement of money, of changing cash between hands or digital currency or anything. Economics simply mean, it can be everything you do is an economic decision. For example, if you choose to sit here and watch my video and spend 10 or 15 minutes with me, as opposed to 10 or 15 minutes, doing something else that you could be making money, well, you're making an economic decision. If you choose to be in one relationship or another, whether that's romantic, platonic, or business relationship, that is an economic decision, because at the end of the day, we've heard the phrase, time is money. I think more specifically, we could say time is value, and value is what money essentially is. It's supposed to be just a representation of value, of stored value. So if you go work for somebody for 10 hours, they hand you pieces of paper and say, this represents the value of the work that you've done. So it's important to understand that every decision you make is an economic decision, no matter whether there's actually money involved or not. Let's just get that out of the way. So when Konkin talks about counter-economics, he's talking about countering the mainstream economic system, the mainstream, what is also known as the white market, the white economy, which again is the mainstream taxed economy, taxed market. This is where your transactions are very much in the state's hands. They're very much aware of everything you're doing, and all those things. So we're actually going to look at Chapter 2, Counter-Economics and Agorism. And for those of you who've read my writing on Agorism and Counter-Economics before, I've expanded, I've added new things. So this book is not just a retread, it's actually new ideas. So let's read a little bit about what counter-economics is and what the counter-economy is. Konkin called on individuals to exit the mainstream economic system because he was one of the first modern thinkers to recognize that the unregulated market is the largest market in the world. Sometimes known as System D, alternative, or informal economy, the value of this untaxed and unregulated market has a market value in the trillions of dollars. Throughout history, when a government or king has tried to enforce prohibition, whether that's drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, or books, they inadvertently cause a growth in the underground economy, or as Konkin called it, the counter-economy. And upon recognizing that the state has been incapable to slow the growth of the counter-economy, Konkin saw an opportunity to disempower the state and to preserve liberty for the people. He called this strategy counter-economics, which he defined as, quote, theory and practice of all human action which is neither accepted by the state nor involving any initiatory violence or threat of violence. So again, this means that if the state says it's illegal to smoke weed or to sell weed or anything like that, and you think doing so could benefit you and you're not harming anybody in the process, that is a counter-economic action. And throughout the years, Konkin continuously refined his understanding and his writing on the topic. In doing so, he offered several definitions on the background on counter-economics. So I'm going to read you guys these different definitions that I found in his various books and writing. From the New Libertarian Manifesto, which was Konkin's first book, he wrote, quote, an explanation of how people keep their wealth and property from the state is counter-establishment economics, or counter-economics for short. The actual practice of human actions that evade, avoid, and defy the state is counter-economic activity. But in the same sloppy way economics refers to both the science and what it studies, counter-economics will undoubtedly be used. Since this writing is counter-economic theory itself, what will be referred to as counter-economics is the practice. So that's a little bit kind of semantic and maybe confusing, but what he's saying is that when people talk about economics, they're talking about the field of study that some people consider to be a science, like let's say Austrian economics or the Chicago School of Economics, but also it refers to the thing itself that it studies. So economists study economics. You get what I'm saying? And you can study Austrian economics and you're going to study economics. So it's both the science and it's the subject. And he's saying the same thing for the counter economy and counter economic theory itself. A second definition, which comes from the Agorism primer, he says, a counter economist is 1, anyone practicing a counter economic act, 2, one who studies such acts. Counter economics is 1, the practice, 2, the study of counter economic acts. Counter-economics is doing what you want, when you want, for your own good reasons. And this one I really like. This came from Counter-Economics, which was, again, his final book that didn't get finished. He says, quote, counter-economics sounds like counterculture. Indeed, the term was chosen with that in mind. Where the counterculture rejected an establishment culture and its values in the 1960s, the counter-economists reject the establishment economics as just as corrupt. Much of the counterculture was counter-economic, much of it was not. Anti-economics is not counter-economics. In fact, counter-economics as theory was developed from what could be called an orthodox revolt against a heretical, impure establishment economics. So Konkin was inspired by Murray Rothbard and, the libertarian movement of the 60s, but he went even further and said, look, we can't just run for office, we can't try to vote these people out, and we definitely can't violently overthrow them, so we need a third path. And he called that counter-economics, which again is about opting out of economic systems. That means the financial system, literally trying to avoid the dollar, trying to avoid the banks, but also opting out of all the systems that don't align with your values. As I wrote here, I have always seen counter-economics as a method of aligning your actions with your stated goals and principles. If you don't support the legal wars of aggression, find ways to avoid paying taxes or donate your taxes to a charity. Tired of central banks manipulating the state's currency and enslaving you via funny money? Avoid the state's money, use alternative currency, barter, reduce your need for money, etc. Counter-economics suggests that moral people break bad laws by choosing to consciously opt out of systems that do not align with their values. As Konkin wrote in the Unfinished Counter-Economics, quote, counter-economic activity is any human action that takes place without the approval of the state. And since laws cover almost every human endeavor, often prohibiting both the action and its corresponding inaction, everyone, to at least some small degree, must bend or break laws simply to exist. Being a counter-economist means that when you run into a roadblock to your liberty and health, you find a way around it. This can include using or creating alternative currencies, community gardening efforts, which provide an opportunity to be free of the big corporate grocery stores, tax resistance, and operating a business without licenses so none of your hard-earned money goes to the state. Counter-economics also extends to the creation of alternative education programs, free schools or skill shares, and independent media ventures that counter the establishment narratives. The reality is that the counter-economy is all around you. Every time someone pays a neighbor in cash to mow the lawn or do some handiwork, they are participating in the counter-economy. The transaction does not involve taxes going to the state, and the cash makes it a non-digital, untraceable transaction. If you've ever shopped at a garage sale, flea market, or pop-up shop and not paid taxes, and perhaps even paid with an alternative currency, you have been a counter-economist. Of course, most of the public who participates in the counter, underground, alternative economy do not realize the potential and likely have never heard of Konkin or counter-economics. He believed a raising in consciousness and the awareness of the power of the counter-economy could create a mass movement of people who exit from the system and build new ways outside the technocratic state. Now, Konkin didn't explicitly talk about the technocracy, the technocratic state, but he did know that technology could both be a tool for good and bad, and so he realized that opting out was important. And as I outlined in this book, or this chapter right here, Counter-Economics for the Digital Age, aka Surviving the Digital Dystopia, we're at a point now where you, yes you, I'm talking to you, are going to have to decide. Do you want to live under constant surveillance? Do you want to be facial scanned and retina scanned and all these different things? Or are you going to be willing to change your lifestyle, change your behavior, and to voluntarily opt out before it becomes mandatory? Because as I outlined in the book, this is happening in China, Malaysia, Pakistan, India, Indonesia, Philippines, Taiwan, the US, France, Africa, other places. It's spreading all over the world. So you have a choice to make. As I write here, this is the world of the early 21st century. If we assume technology will continue to advance exponentially, then it's probably a safe bet that the surveillance and privacy concerns are here to stay. Unless there is some sort of resistance to these dangers, privacy will be completely eroded within a decade. For the moment, these technologies are mostly voluntary. For example, you don't have to buy the latest digital home assistant device, and you don't have to carry a cell phone with you everywhere you go. This means we as individuals have the power to decide what type of products and companies we support with our purchases and how we interact with technology. We don't have to blindly submit and opt into every latest tech update. And, I'm not going to show you much more of this book. I hope you guys will check it out when I download it. But that is what counter-economics is. And that is why I believe counter-economics is at least part of the solution to living a life free of the technocratic state. Because we have to find a way, I believe, to opt out of their systems and to create something better in the long term. And I don't think we have many options, guys. I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room to work with. We have a brief period in time, and we can basically choose to opt into solutions like counter-economics. And again, you don't have to be an anarchist, an agorist, or counter-economist to understand the value of this strategy. You can be a statist and say, you know what, but I'm going to opt out of some of these systems. You can be somebody who is a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, and you can decide that you want to find ways to opt out of the system. So again, the book is called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. I have 2 chapters left to write, and then it's going to go straight to the editor, who you guys have met before, Emma Fiala. She's the editor for the Mind Unleashed. She's going to be editing my book, and then I'm going to print out some test copies, and if everything goes well, by the end of this month, January, you'll be able to download it for free, as you do with all my works, and you can also purchase a physical copy if you want to hold it, because I like to read physical books, and I'm excited about this because not only is this book going to include all the things that I was just showing you guys, my own kind of writings, my own works, I'm actually going to include Konkin's unfinished work. Like I told you guys that I found that Konkin's book was never finished. He died before he could finish it. So if you look at the table of contents, after my first 2 parts, which are my original writing and some inspired by Konkin, the 3rd part of the book is just going to be all of Konkin's finished chapters as well as his notes on his unfinished chapters. And maybe if you're not a huge nerd for agorism or counter-economics or anarchism, that'll be irrelevant to you. But I think it's pretty cool that this guy died and he was never able to publish his work, and now that it's been put online, I can take it, I can bring it out to the digital age, I can update it and adapt it to our current paradigm and maybe expose some new people to these ideas. So I'm really excited about that, guys, and I'm really excited to share this book with you. Again, it'll be out later this month. If you want to support me and support my efforts, then I want to invite you to invest in the 5G Trojan Horse documentary crowdfunding campaign, because the money is going to go towards funding our new documentary, the 5G Trojan Horse, but it's also going towards paying the editor for my book. So I do all this because I care about it. These are my personal projects. No one's paying me. I don't have any advances from any fancy book companies or Netflix or anything. I just figured it's a time to wake people up to 5G and the technocracy, so I'm going to make a documentary about that. We've already written that documentary. We've already recorded it. It's being edited right now. It'll also be out in late January. And I decided I wanted to write a book to bring these ideas up to speed and try to show people that there are solutions. I'm most excited to share with you guys my ideas on what I'm calling the counter-economic underground railroad, which we also did a video about. You can find that video on this channel and on the website. But if you want to make sure that I can pay my editor for my book and for the documentary, please do consider investing in the 5G Trojan Horse crowdfunding campaign. Also, please consider signing up for a monthly support at Patreon and at Subscribestar, guys. And I think I'm going to leave it there for the moment. But as I said, this is going to be kind of a new segment that we're going to continue into 2020. So if you want to make sure that your questions get answered, you can hit me up at Derrick@theconsciousresistance.com. You can leave a comment just anywhere you want, and I'll be scrolling through the comments. And if I see a comment that I was like, you know what, that's worth answering, I'll choose your comment, I'll call you out, and we'll answer it. And it doesn't have to be a positive question too. If you want to say, like for example, somebody in the beginning of this video said, will you carry your hate against the president in 2020 despite all the good he continues to do? Piss and moan. I mean, we could do a fun video answering that question if we wanted to, but I think we'll leave it for more serious subject matter. But until next time, guys, that's it. This has been Questions for Derrick #1. Again, if you want to email me, just put Questions for Derrick in the subject line, and I might include you in an upcoming video. We're going to try to do these once a week. And until the next video, guys, you know the drill. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.